All right, ladies and gentlemen, good evening, good afternoon. We are calling in from the North Shore of Kauai at Hanalei Initiative. We have a couple guests today who are calling in from off island, who will have go first today. Thank you folks for attending in person and via Zoom. This is all about a Q&A and talk story session for the North Shore businesses, particularly in Hanalei. Thanks for coming out. We have a pretty awesome agenda here, lots of knowledge, lots of resources on the line. So before we get into a lot of the meat and potatoes, Representative Nakamura will give an introduction, and then we'll go into some of our guest speakers.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm calling in from the state capitol in Honolulu, and I want to thank all of you for participating in this webinar. And I especially want to thank the Kauai Government Employees Federal Credit Union for organizing this webinar. Thank you to Monica and Ivory and Chantal for hosting this event for the North Shore businesses. The past several years have been difficult, from the April 2018 flooding event to the coronavirus in March of 2020, to the non-participation in the Safe Travels program, and then the Hanalei Hillslide. It's been one event after the other, and we know that businesses are really struggling. So I thank all of the participants for attending, and for all of the speakers for sharing your mana'o with folks who could use this type of advice. I'm planning to stay in and listen in to learn myself about the resources available and the needs of the businesses on the North Shore. So thank you so very much for including me in this dialogue. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Representative Nakamura. We appreciate your presence. All right, without further ado, we will kick it off to the man of the hour, Mr. Mark Spain, District Director of SBA Hawaii. Tons of resources coming out from SBA, so it's really cool that we have him here. Business community, please know that Mark is available and accessible. We'll post his email and even his cell phone in the chat today. And we're just going to let Mark take it away.
Thank you very much, Monica, and to Representative Nakamura. Perhaps we'll have the opportunity to meet at the Capitol in the coming days. I look forward to establishing those relationships throughout Hawaii. I'm looking forward to really having a close working relationship with a special part of Hawaii, Kauai, and the North Shore in particular. So it's it's a fine rendezvous that we're having, Monica, and thank you for the invitation to join you. I think the most important thing, wanting to be focused on the questions and answers, is to give a very, let's say, reasonably high level overview of the 4 programs that are really important, some more so than others. And I will really go into those as we go through the PPP program, followed by the EIDL program. Several things are happening in both of these categories, which obviously I know there'll be questions about, so I won't attempt to make it a Q&A session during my brief remarks, but I do want to reserve the time so that those who have questions case by case can do so. In terms of the PPP, the most extensive change has been, of course, Congress to extend the PPP draw number 2 application through May 31. That means that there are 2 things happening in the PPP program. And as a lender, of course, some of the concerns have been about the length of time it's taking for forgiveness to occur. And so it should be understood that if that is a problem for some, and maybe they've waited for some time for their forgiveness to be processed, it is for a reason. That reason is because the people involved with the Forgiveness Processing Center were drafted to actually go over to the PPP draw number 2 side, Currently here in Hawai'i, we have 2 of our staff detailed to these processing roles. And we do expect that after the 1st of May, forgiveness applications in the queue, maybe as long as 140 days, will be cleared. For those who have not yet filed for forgiveness, we'll go into more detail on that on your PPP draw number 1, knowing that you don't have to worry about any deadlines coming upon you. We want to make sure that everyone feels comfortable with the forgiveness process. PPP draw number 2 right now is probably approaching almost $280 billion nationwide. We have almost $5 billion in loans that have been done for Hawai'i. And we also know it's important to know that the PPP has a limited component in terms of it's based on payroll. And I'm working with several of our establishments across the state who are asking for better guidance on how much they can spend on payroll, and more importantly, spend more money of the PPP funds on non-payroll expense. We're going to have presentations on that statewide after the 19th of April. I'll loop Monica into that and let you know when the events are scheduled, because those will provide detailed questions and answers about how PPP draw number 2 should be and shall be spent in order to achieve full forgiveness. Leaving the PPP program alone, I'm going to go now to the EIDL. The EIDL had 2 components in 2020. The EIDL loan advance was given out in early March, and actually in the summer months of June was modified. The original advance was supposed to be for $10,000 per entity, but the SBA administrator, in my opinion, unwisely capped it at $1,000 per employee. So with that being said, not until this past March, just literally 2 weeks ago, if you had a $1,000 or $2,000 advance given to you, but you merited obviously the full 10, and here's the key that's been put in the most current legislation. You have to live in or have the business located in a low to moderate income census tract. If that does describe your business, then you will receive, as a business owner, an email from the SBA Office of Disaster Assistance telling you that if you qualify with that census tract and you did not receive the full 10,000, using my illustration of 2,000, for example, $8,000 will be coming to you to make up the full intent of the EIDL advance. So that is one thing we'll talk about, I'm sure, during the Q&A, because the targeted EIDL advance, as it's known, does rely on the low and moderate income census tract, which of course is probably more dominant in the island of Kauai than it is in the island of Oahu, for example. On the EIDL loan, another act by the administrator back in June of 2020 capped the $2 million maximum amount for an EIDL loan to $150,000. I can tell you personally, I have had heartache after heartache dealing with businesses who, because they did not receive the full amount that was due under the statute, and that cap really only meant part of the needs that they had. Obviously, some businesses did not succeed. So I don't want to paint a rosy picture. There were problems along the way last year where the need for EIDL, economic injury disaster loans from the SBA directly, should have been at a higher level. Well, that's been resolved. As of this day, Tuesday, or as of yesterday, excuse me, the amount has been increased from 150 to 500,000. Again, if you received an EIDL loan and were capped at 150,000, you will receive an email from the same Office of Disaster Assistance Center to tell you that your loan will be reconsidered. So prepare yourself for that email. If for any reason you can apply for more money based upon the fact that the original amounts were based upon a shorter pandemic period by far, feel free to go into, and I will provide links to Monica that will help you navigate this process easier than just going up on the website and searching, if you will, for the right portal to enter. you will find that you will have a chance to reconsider what you need because an economic injury has been more lengthy than originally contemplated. So again, if you were capped at 150, you will see an automatic email. If you had a lesser amount but would like to have the loan amount reconsidered, we can work with you on that. And that'll be going directly to SBA itself. It doesn't go through the financial institutions when we talk about EIDL, but the economic injury disaster loan is still available. If you've never applied, the economic injury disaster loan will also be available for new applicants. And very candidly, between the PPP program and the EIDL program, the EIDL gives you much greater flexibility on how the funds can be used. I want to emphasize that, much greater flexibility. Admittedly, the PPP is designed for keeping employees, and so it's payroll centric. But in the case of the economic injury disaster loan, it's much more latitude and scope, if you will. And frankly, Monica, it almost brings us into a situation where this loan probably will become more prominent again because of its breadth and scope of applications and latitudes. So we look forward to having people ask more questions about the EIDL loan that maybe had looked at it before. Yes, it is not a forgivable loan, but here's the factor. It is at a 3.75% interest rate for 30 years. It is also for nonprofits, 2.75% for 30 years. And the deferment, actual payments deferment, will be up to 24 months. Up to 24 months based upon your individual business category as determined by the NAICS codes. That's the North American Industrial Coding System. That's what NAICS code stands for. So that's a brief description, Monica and team, of the EIDL program. Now, shifting gears, this is going to be a topic that is happening tonight at 6:02 p.m. this evening. Those who have venues that have been closed because of COVID and because of the lockdown, if you have a qualified venue, you will be able to apply for a grant. That means a total grant to cover the cost as the application will detail for you. It actually opens officially at midnight tonight Eastern time, which means we in Hawaii have the ability to apply still before the evening is out. This gives Hawaii applicants a chance to apply for the grant while maybe most people on the East Coast and Central time zones are still sleeping, let alone the West Coast. So that is something that I will provide links to Monica on and give you ability to, should I say, more detail on the shuttered venue. We'll give you as much detail as we can. I didn't want to make a slide presentation. What I wanted to do was send the links to you so that you can then download them and utilize them appropriately. That's going to be, in essence, the shuttered venue. I've worked, in fact, with one major entity in Honolulu called the Honolulu Symphony, and they performed at the Blasdale. And the Blasdale at this point basically has all the facilities, but they have no staff. Everything has to be done by the user. Early on, the description of what the presenters were going to be eligible for was in doubt. And I will tell you, one of the links I will send to Monica for the distribution will be a video that actually walks through the eligibility process in a very visual way, very easy to take notes from. As a result of that video being published, when I shared it with both the symphony and the ballet on Monday, 2 days ago, it made their eligibility certain as opposed to being unclear. So we do have tools to help on the shuttered venue grant program that will help those who would be eligible on the island of Kauai, that they can obviously have an easy understanding of how to apply for the process. So at that point, the shuttered venue, like I said, will be operable tonight, Hawaii time, and you should look forward to, if that's an interest you have, look forward to some of the information I'll be sharing with Monica to help you navigate that portal. Lastly, the next program, probably more of interest to Kauai perhaps, will be the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. That program, we just had a briefing on today with our congressional liaisons. I've been working with Ed Case and also Congressman Kahele from the Big Island. And we are looking forward to, shall we say, provide more information to Monica today and tomorrow for publication on the website that, of course, the credit union provides. You'll find that it is a very broad program. It covers everything from breweries to tap rooms to food trucks. Everything you could imagine is in the say in the queue. Everything is eligible. There are certain things you have to follow, of course. This guidance will be published over the next 2 weeks, probably more concisely once the application has been vetted by the Office of Management and Budget. That form number, for those of you who want to write this down, is a form number 3571. That form, when it clears the compliance review of OMB and Treasury, will then be the launch for a landing page about the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. Within 2 weeks after that, and I'm going to say by the end of April, we will be able to see a portal opened so that those who have restaurants from a wide variety, it could be a bowling alley, for example, I'll give you that as an illustration. A bowling alley that has at least 33% of its revenue coming from its food operation would be eligible under the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. So there are a number of details that we'll be providing, and I will keep Monica in that chain of information. And also Robbie, of course, will be getting the information as well through the Small Business Development Center Resource Network. So I'm hoping at this point that these 4 programs will have good merit and applicable merit, in some cases more than others. So with that, I will stop, Monica, and give a pause and see if you have any follow-ons, and then perhaps we can go to the next speaker. But if I've left anything unclear, the Q&A will hopefully help do that as we go to that portion of the program. Monica, thank you again for the opportunity to be a sharer with your team today.
Thank you so much, Mark. You are a wealth of knowledge for us. We do have lots of questions spilling in. I want to encourage all of the attendees to continue asking questions either in the chat box or the Q&A box. We'll keep collecting these, and we have a long Q&A session geared for the end of this, so we'll move along. Mark Perriello from Kauai Chamber of Commerce will be next. Thank you for being here in Hanalei, Mark. Take it away.
Happy to be here, Monica. Thank you, Monica. Thank you, Ivory. Thank you, Chantal, is there feedback? No, great. All right, I'm getting feedback. So just me, that's good. Thank you for putting this together. I think it's so important for the businesses up here in Hanalei to hear from everyone today. Thank you, Mark Spain, for taking time to be here. Thank you, Robbie, as well, and Representative Nakamura. I have 2 things that I wanted to talk about today, very specifically. One is the county recently released some innovation grants to a number of different nonprofits. The Kauai Chamber, working with HTDC, which is the Hawaii Technology Development Center, received one of those grants. And we would like to work with you up here to figure out how we can help you innovate during these challenging times. We have a number of ideas, but I really need to hear from you about the things you need so that we aren't just, fumbling through and putting things together that don't make sense. For example, one of the ideas that we did have, though, was, rounding up a number of CPAs and coming up here and doing some sessions with folks who might have questions about some of these very specific loans, programs that Mark just went through, and other things like that. And so we do have the ability, I think, to come up here and bring some resources to your business. But again, we'd be very open to what type of things you might need, whether it's e-commerce, food manufacturing. I think folks know that 80% of the taro grown in Hawaii comes from right here on the North Shore. And so we really want to be cognizant of that and help all the businesses, retail, restaurants, ag, what have you. The second program that I wanted to talk about today was the Kokua Kauai card. If you haven't heard about it, the Kauai Chamber, along with the Kauai Visitors Bureau and the HLTA Kauai chapter, got together and really, at the request of Mayor Kawakami, put this effort together. So Mayor Kawakami wanted to reopen Kauai to the Safe Travels program in a way that was going to keep our residents healthy and safe. And in order to do that, he asked the hotels and the business community to encourage people visiting our island to take a voluntary second COVID-19 test. And so 72 hours after they arrive. And so in order to incentivize them to take the test, we have put together a group of 81 businesses so far who have signed up to give discounts and promotions at their place of business to anyone who shows this Kokua card. And it looks like this. Monica's smiling. And so the Kokua card, there's still the ability to sign up if your business is interested. And I think it will be a great way for people to come to your business. It's a great way to promote your business. There's no cost to participate, which is also important. The only cost is the promotional or discount that you give to the customer. To sign up for this program, just visit the Kauai Chamber website. It's kauaichamber.org/Kokua card. And you can also get there from the top navigation menu if you want as well. And there's a brief application, name of your business, type of promotion that you're offering, any stipulations that you might want. And then if you want to look at the offers that people have out there now, you can visit KauaiCard.com, and that's KOKUA, Kokua, KauaiCard.com, and you can see all of the various businesses. You can look them up geographically, alphabetically, by region. It's a really dynamic website so that people who do have the card can really find easy access to the different promotions that are out there. And I would encourage you, especially during this time, to do everything that you can to help promote your business, including the Kokua card. That is just two of the things that the Chamber has going on. We have a lot more, but I will hand it over back to Monica at this point.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mark. I also put in the chat box the two websites that Mark mentioned. So please go check out kauaichamber.org. They have some great resources going on for businesses, and the kauaicard.com is in there as well. All right, again, questions keep flooding in, so we'll address these at the Q&A at the end. Next on our list, we have Robbie.melton from SBDC. Robbie, thank you for being here in Hanalei today.
Oh, thank you, Monica, for having me. And thank you for you and your team for organizing it. It's so great that we can serve our companies. I'm going to share my screen here. And I have a little presentation. So it can work. There we go. Yeah, so I'm with the Small Business Development Center, and we're actually a program of the SBA. So we work closely with Mark Spain. And a lot of people think we're all about just helping you with your business plan, but we're also so much more. And I'm going to talk about financial resource. I'm really specifically honing in on that for today because that's why you're here. So as I said, we're part of the SBA. It's a great program. It's national. So for our office here, we're in Lihue, but because of the pandemic, we're physically closed, but we're active. We meet people by Zoom or by phone, either way. So the great thing about the SBDC program is it doesn't cost a company anything, no matter how much time I commit to you, no matter what kind of work I'm doing, there's no cost. It's completely confidential, and we do a wide range of services. So for financial services, we work a lot for the SBA loans, all the CARES Act funding that Mark has talked about. There's also a 7A and 404 SBA loans that we help companies secure. USDA has loans and grants that's available for most of Kauai because we're a rural island. There are also state programs that are available for companies to access. Some of those programs, because of COVID, funding is not as available, but they keep coming up with new programs and new ways to fund businesses. Then recently, there have been some new microloan programs that have emerged in Hawaii. Kiva is one, and it's up to like $15,000. So if you need a small loan, that's a great way to do it. And we can actually help you with that. And then there are some other loans that are available that aren't government related. And then there are business grants and there are some other funding sources. So how do we help? We help get you ready for the application. So we can actually help you complete the application. For some of the loans, you need a business plan, especially if you're a new company, less than 2 years in business, you are definitely going to be asked to provide a business plan. So we help you with the business plan writing. You'll also need financial projections to get a loan. So what are some of how do we structure those projections to get them in the format that most banks or credit unions or other lending institutions need? We also do feasibility studies, especially if you're doing a guaranteed loan. Usually they require a feasibility study instead of a business plan because they want to look at the overall impact for your company. And then we also do presentation assistance. I'm working with a company right now. He got invited by NASA to present to some investors and to some of the NASA agencies. So I've been working with him to get his presentation and his slide deck ready. So there's lots of different ways we help people get ready for their application. Some of the applications, we actually help them fill out the information. So the other thing we do besides finances is we do help companies grow and be sustainable, because that's really our motto with SBDC, is really not to get you started, but really to continue to grow and be sustainable and get a good return on your investment. So we help with business strategy. So if you're an entrepreneur, we help you with the idea, launch your company. What are the strategies to do that? How do we get your sales increased? Also, if you want to expand your company, if you're an existing company, how do you come up with some new products that you can introduce? What are some of the new markets where you can sell your existing products if you don't want to create new products? There's also international expansion that I think Mark mentioned, that everybody's going global now. So there are different ways that we help you do that. A lot of companies now, even in the pandemic, are looking to hire their first employees. So we help you with that. And if you want to add employees, how do you do that? We also help you look, with your financial analysis to make sure that you can afford to do that. And we help with marketing strategies. So you can see there's a lot of strategy in your business that we can help you with. The other thing that's great about us, it's continual mentoring. So it's not just a one-time Q&A, we're done with you, but we're really here to help you throughout the growth of your company. We help with operations, we help with money management. I mentioned personnel. So we also help with management and leadership. So that's one of the things, if you're struggling in managing your company or managing your employees, we help you with that. And we also, just help you overcome some of the pitfalls, because sometimes you're so busy in your day-to-day operation of your company, you don't necessarily see that. So we work with all businesses, entrepreneurs, startups, small businesses of any age. Even if you've been in business 60 years, but you're still a small company, we're here for you. Nonprofits, any industry type, from restaurants, retail, mom and pops, engineering, you name it, we do it. Agriculture too, I'm going to put that out there. We also work with agricultural businesses. There's some other services we provide that I think are really critical. So we provide industry data on different markets. And why do you care about that? Well, one, if you're thinking about expanding your product market, we can go into different market areas. We have database access to databases that you can't afford, because these things, when you're trying to get industry data, cost thousands of dollars. So we actually have the ability to do that for you, and we do it for free, which is great for you. We have connections to key resources. If you need to have access to a certain kind of service, we can provide those connections to you. We also offer business workshops and training. Those are provided at a very nominal fee, but we do that across the state. So our success is measured by your success. That's just the best way. So how many companies do we help start up? How many loans and investments do we help you secure? What are the jobs created? How do we help you increase your sales? So like I said, we're here vested to help you in the long term. So this is our contact information. You register for services through our website. Just select Kauai. And then I provided our local number and then my email address. So I really look forward to working with all of you in the future. So thank you.
Awesome, Robbie. Thank you. Mark might be our first question. Did you have a question for Robbie, Mark?
No, I just wanted to congratulate her. She's an excellent example of what we call our SBDC network, and it makes it possible for us to reach the community in ways that we as SBA staff alone could not do. And Robbie is an excellent example of that.
Yeah, that was great, Robbie. I'll be coming to see you soon. I didn't realize you guys did all that for free. It's incredible. So we have a good amount of questions already started here, and I'm going to encourage the attendees to keep them coming. Due to feedback issues out in the lobby area, I'll just go ahead and host the Q&A. Chantal, if you want to come in here, you're welcome to, though. Chantal, I just want to say thank you to you. She's our business development champion here at the credit union, and Ivory, Lloyd as well. Thank you, ladies, they're the reason this is all happening today. And they were going to host the Q&A, but they're also out with guests so they can collect some further questions as well. But in the meantime, let's get started. All right, first question. And whoever knows the answer, just go for it on the panel here. We received our PPP number 2 in February of this year. We are under the assumption that spending requirements for forgiveness number 2 are similar to the first PPP loan requirements. Do you share those assumptions?
Robbie, if you would like to, go ahead. If you want, I will follow on. Whatever is best for you, Robbie.
I think, why don't you go ahead? You're the expert on that.
Okay, not a problem. Yes, the forgiveness requirements are the same. One thing that happened with PPP draw number 2, as Robbie knows, is that in early March, they changed from, let's say, Schedule C. Let's say they're a sole proprietor, and their Schedule C line 31 was the method of which the calculation for the PPP funds were addressed. In early March, and by virtue of President Biden making that choice, it was changed to line number 7 of the Schedule C. And that had a dramatic effect for those who are now filing, because the difference between net income as reflected on 31 line on the Schedule C versus gross income is quite different. Now, the question has also come up, can those that filed prior to this change get a revisitation? I'm sorry, the Congress didn't allow for that to occur retroactively. So for those who have not yet filed a PPP draw number 2 and you're inclined to do so, recognize you work with your financial advisor. Line 7 now will be the one. For those who have other forms of organization, that would be either C Corp or S Corp or partnerships, those provisions aren't the same, because the reason for the Schedule C filing as a sole proprietor is it's ideally meant to provide the taxpayer with as much shelter as possible. If you're in a normal C Corp or S Corp or comparable organization, either LLC or partnership, those provisions are handled in other ways.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark. I have Chantal with me now. So I put her email in the chat as well, as she'll be following up with everybody. And if you have any questions or want to see the links, that's where it will come from. Joel, I hope that answered the question for you. And if you have any follow-ups, just add them to the chat. The next question is, are publicly funded venues, schools and university performing arts centers eligible to apply for SVOG?
The most important distinction is the answer is yes, but they're in a priority number 3, and the first one will be given for those venues that are for-profit. So the government entities are not excluded based upon the criteria that you will see in the website and the landing page, that the links that I will send you, but they are third because they're considered as publicly owned venues, or at least supported by public funds, not to be as in need as those that are privately funded. And that's the basic answer. So yes, they're eligible, subject to meeting the criteria, but they're going to be third in the process when the applications are taken in first time this evening, Hawaii time.
Great, thank you, Mark. Next question. How many EIDL loans can a company get?
The answer is 1.
Great. Next question. If you already drew PPP number 1 and PPP number 2, is EIDL still an option?
The answer is yes.
I feel like we're on a Jeopardy show.
I'm waiting for the $600 box to come up. That's what I'm waiting for.
All right. Any relief for food producers asking for Crossroad Pastures? And just a little blurb. I love you guys, Crossroad Pastures, and we get your egg deliveries. Thank you.
The answer is I would like for them to, I want to make sure I research it, because I said at the top of the hour, I'm not going to give you information that I'm not fully versed on, and that's a very unique question. But you have my address, my email address. We will share with the questionnaire that they may contact me separately. I'll do the research and give them an answer tomorrow.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mark. We count on them for our eggs and poultry.
You bet.
All right. Justin, from the crowd, will there be forgiveness on the PPP second draw? And maybe we can just address that question in general too, Mark.
Yeah, there will be forgiveness on both. And I'll give a little bit of background. For those who have gone in on PPP draw number 1, the forgiveness period has been stretched out. The original plan, once the application was filed, it would be accomplished within 90 days. That's what the lenders were waiting for. But with the new change in administration and the demand for PPP draw number 2, the forgiveness period probably will take longer than the original 90-day target, probably closer to 140 days before the queue is. We have about 198,000 loans in forgiveness mode, and we have another probably close to 3.1 million loans that are still outstanding in the forgiveness portal. So with that being said, the PPP draw number 2, by the time people finish their covered period on it, which let's say sometime in late May, the portal for forgiveness will be probably caught up. And I'll tell you why. For those of you who are familiar with contractors, probably most people know about Rocket Mortgage. You see their ads on television a lot. People like that are being brought into the backgrounds to process the application for forgiveness and also loans, so that it doesn't fall solely on the SBA employees. And to comment further, the most recent the American Rescue Act has now provided $1.3 billion in funds for staff hiring and contractor hiring, so that we can keep up with the pace. And that's most important because of the grants, both the SVOG and the restaurant revitalization. Otherwise, we have staff working 24/7. And that is something that over time, as we all know, you get weary. So we want to keep fresh energy into it, and we have to increase the qualified staff to do so.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark. This next question, we've actually heard this question several times now, that has to do with pandemic unemployment, the PUA program, and how that cross-pollinates with these SBA programs. Can a small business owner still receive PUA and collect money for their business, or do they have to give up PUA? Business is slower than normal, so the limited PUA funds are helpful, and therefore some businesses are reluctant to want to give that up.
That's a good question, and basically it's the honor system. We don't have enough enforcement mechanisms to even deal with a lot of that. If the integrity of the business owner says the PUA or the payroll protection plan, I think really it's a matter of the individual business owner. They may feel that obligating themselves to having 60% of the payroll expense documented, and then they choose not to do that, and they want to go ahead and put them on PUA, that is something that can cause a conflict. We have one instance on Oahu right now where the PPP receiver put nothing into payroll, but they did put approximately 41% of the money into utilities and back supply chain issues. And so that forgiveness will result in them having a loan for 5 years at 1% for that amount that wasn't payroll related. So again, that's strictly the individual restaurant in this case, know that going in, they made a choice. But if you try to double dip, it is something that I wouldn't want to wish anyone who just happened to be reviewed to have to explain why they were dipping in both resources. It's a matter of integrity, to be candid.
Great, that's helpful. And Mark, just to follow up on that, how, especially for the small business owners who are just sole proprietors with no employees, how might they evaluate whether PUA is going to be more beneficial for them or the EIDL and PPP route?
That's a good question. I think the thing is when they take a look at the payroll costs, including their own, I have a number of sole proprietors who have elected to do only their own payroll. And so they've opted to take advantage of the 2.5 times their annual payroll expense that was of record for 2019. And they've opted to have no employees, of course. When they did, they had contractors who are on 1099s of their own. So in this case, if you take a look at a lump sum, I'll use an amount of 15,000, and let's take a look at the PUA amount. Divide that PUA amount into the 15,000, which is one example I can give you. You could see that the time it would take for PUA to provide them the same money would be not exactly a short period of time. So they have opted most often to use the PPP money because it's totally forgiven. Well, the PUA, of course, is no obligation to return, but the timeline of immediacy is what we feel made them make the choice to go with the PPP.
Great. Remember, we're recording this and we can always follow up with Mark for those of you who want to hear that again. That's very helpful, I think, for a lot of the small business and sole proprietors out here.
Right.
Okay, this next question is, can you touch on the SBA program regarding the low to moderate census tract? It appears the Hanalei Hyena census tract has low per capita and median household income numbers that would fall into this category. What is the significance of this? The intent of the administration prior to President Biden coming into office was to take the targeted advance, as it was called in that legislation that was signed on 12/27/20. The low to moderate income census tract is a product of the IRS. It draws its data from the 2010 census because the 2020 census has not yet been compiled for release. So as a result, what they were attempting to do was make more of the money targeted to the lower moderate underserved communities by using this particular tactic. I can give you an example on Oahu. We have Kahuku up near the Mormon temple. It's a very modest area, mostly agriculture, and yet it is not in a low to moderate income census tract. That is being appealed through Congressman Case.
because we feel that the geo map that is being used, provided by the IRS, is not necessarily reflective of reality on the ground. So if there's anything in the low to moderate income, let's say on the North Shore, we're talking everything from the lighthouse all the way out to kind of Point. Don't hesitate to make a contact with us and we'll give you the methodology. This would be something for Congressman Kahele to address, as Congressman Case has addressed it on Oahu.
Great, thank you. This next question is addressed to Mark Perriello. Mark, can you talk more about what you are looking for with the innovation grant and what it means for businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I'll focus on one thing. Actually, it can be very broad, but for a great example would be helping you with your website, helping you with e-commerce. And so, well, it is difficult for people to get down into Hanalei Town. What can we do to help you pivot so that you are able to sell your goods, keep your business open through e-commerce? And one of the things that we're exploring right now is, in addition to what you can do with your own website, is how do you get your products featured on, Google Shopping or Amazon.com, so that when people are going to these, for lack of a better, these big box websites, your products are featured there as well, and people don't have to search them out individually on your websites. And so there are a number of things around e-commerce that we're looking at. Again, helping with, accounting, helping people sort of figure out how do they navigate all of this, and, working with Robbie, working with the Small Business Administration, navigate all of this information and all of these different loans, and help them make sense of their own books. Because one of the things that I hear a lot of is, I don't want to be on the hook for more loans. I've taken out so many loans to get through all of these disasters that I don't want to take out more loans. And so helping people figure out what makes sense for them in their business in a really individualized way.
Great, thank you, Mark. Sean, you've been a little quiet. So Sean is our credit union's in-house PPP expert here on the island. We are still accepting PPP applications every day. They're trickling in. Sean, the question for you is, what do you say to the folks who still haven't touched the PPP world because of the unknowns? They don't know they qualify. They don't want to deal with loans. We've heard so many comments in the community about why they haven't. And I would just ask you to address that target audience right now.
Sure. I think the first thing I'd say to that is you're not alone. There's a lot of people, we continue to hear from business owners that haven't really inquired about PPP yet because, first of all, they hear that it's a loan and there's a lot of fear that they won't be able to get it forgiven and they'll have to pay it back. The other piece is the question around how much of that has to be used on payroll and how much of it can be used for other expenses. And if your business is shut down, then you don't really have payroll. And so that's definitely a concern for a lot of business owners. What I would say is for every business, it's a good idea to contact your lender and see what your lender can do for you. I think that many businesses can benefit, and almost all businesses can at this point, especially after the changes that Mark was referring to, now that you can use your gross income as a sole proprietor instead of your net income. And sole proprietor would be anybody that owns a business by themselves without and even it could be employees. So basically, if you look at your tax return and you see that you file a Schedule C, then you would qualify. That could be your business where you have some employees. It could be even an LLC that has been disregarded and files their taxes on their Schedule C. So a lot of businesses that maybe have a lot of write-offs and deductions on their tax return, that when they came in the first time and we told them that they weren't eligible or would only be eligible for a very small amount because their net profit in 2019 wasn't very much, Now they can come back and they can use their gross, which is a much higher number and would potentially make you eligible for a PPP loan or for a larger PPP loan. So I would definitely advise everybody to contact your lender, even if you contacted them before and didn't get one. Try again, and I think that you'll find that there's a lot of opportunities there for you. In terms of the forgiveness, 60% has to be used on payroll. The rest can be used on certain qualified expenses like rent and utilities. That 60% payroll is oftentimes confusing for people that are self-employed without employees. And payroll is also defined as the owner's own income. So the profit that you make off of your business, that is considered payroll. So if your PPP loan is structured and the amount of your PPP loan is based on your gross income from your Schedule C on your tax return, and then that loan would be fully forgivable because all of that money qualifies as payroll expenses in most cases. So please contact your lender, contact us, and we can try to get something for you.
Awesome. Thank you, Sean. A follow-up question came in while you were talking. What are some funding options for sole proprietors with bad credit?
I'll comment on that. I think there's three things here that in the case of the PPP, the bad credit wasn't an issue. In the case of the EIDL loan, you had to have a minimum credit score of 560. In the grants that are now being used, and I can go into greater detail if time permits, I have 3 of my documents here that can talk about the scope of the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, where the grant program itself will have no credit impact. So the only one that has bad credit limitations at a 560 FICO score is the economic injury disaster loan that's done directly by the SBA. It does not fall into the lender's kuleana from the standpoint of a grant or in the case of the PPP.
Great, thank you, Mark. Next question, due to Kauai being shut down for so long, many businesses were unable to rehire employees during the first draw PPP 24-week window. In these situations, are there any chances that the 24-week forgiveness can be extended?
I'll give you the answer to that as well. Basically, that is past legislation that was done on June the 5th when the covered period was extended from 8 to 24 weeks. That basically is in the rearview mirror. There will be no extension of the covered period. If you look at the current PPP draw number 2, the same covered period time frame applies. So what they basically have to do is recognize if they were closed, many, and I can't speak for people necessarily in all islands, but many of our colleagues that were in that situation, they put their employees to work doing what we call alternative measures that enhance the business. It could be even involved with pivoting directly to outbound email marketing of their products and services. So in most ways, the money was used for that purpose so that it would qualify under the 60% provision. Admittedly, there have been 1, maybe 2, but maybe the exception as opposed to the rule that felt, well, we don't have an open door, so I won't keep the employees, let them go on unemployment. If they received that money and did not use it for payroll at the 60%, in this case, when I say payroll, we're talking $1 was the loan, 60 cents had to be used for payroll. If it wasn't used, then it becomes a 1% loan. For if it's before June 5th of 2020, it's a 2-year term. If it's after June 5th of 2020, it's a 5-year term, both at 1% interest. So some cases, if they didn't follow the regimen, that is the 60-40 rule, then that's the problem.
Got it. Great, Mark. Next question. Is the PPP loan eligible for business owners who have independent contractors and pay themselves out as owners, managers of the company?
Good question. And the key thing is, if they are on 1099 and they work dedicated as contractors to the entity, the employer cannot use their 1099s as a basis of filing for the PPP. The individuals have to file under their own auspices for a PPP loan.
Awesome. Great question. These are awesome questions. We've got a couple more. If you have an EIDL loan for less than the maximum amount, can you restructure the earlier loan to increase the loan amount?
The answer is yes. And there is a protocol to do it. It's not all that difficult. And I'll give you an example, as we said earlier, but I'll restate it. If you had been maxed at 150, you automatically will get an email from SBA indicating that you now can go above to the level that you were qualified up to a point of 500,000. Even though the statutory is 2 million, it is also probably in the latter part of May, you're going to see maybe that 500,000 be lifted. I have 2 borrowers here on Oahu, one on the Big Island that qualified for 1.1 million, but they received us the 150,000. So there could be 2 increments where the maximum is going to be increased up, and even conceivably before the end of the fiscal year, September of 2021, we could see the statutory limit being observed as the maximum loan amount. So that's going to be a process. In the case where they did not have the 150,000 max, let's say they got one for 80,000, but the period of time has now lasted longer. It's going to go for 24 months as opposed to just 12 months. You're going to be able to see that reconsideration request definitely looked at and seriously approved.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark. Last question before we get to questions from perhaps the panelist crew here. I filed EIDL, but I never heard back.
Okay, send me an email. I'll take care of my good friend Cynthia from the Big Island, who happens to be remotely working for the Office of Disaster Assistance. I won't give her last name because she won't authorize that, but Cynthia is my friend, and those kind of requests can be dealt with quickly. Usually our turnaround is 14 days, if not less, based upon what is involved with the application originally.
Great answer. How about that, North Shore? This is pretty incredible. I'm going to put Mark's email once again in the chat there for the person who asked that question. All right, you guys have some incredible resources at your disposal here. Any more questions, get them to Ivory or Chantal out in the lobby area and or put them in the chat. Looks like we might have one more question here. Oh, here we go. If you qualified for a pivot grant, can you also apply for innovation grants? And are the innovation grants retroactive against business expenses, or is there a selection process to apply for?
That's outside of my kuleana. I'll let someone else answer that. That's state and local level issue, but a good question.
I don't know if Mark Perriello, you know the answer to that or can give any
resources. I do. The pivot, the innovation grants were $50,000 grants. They gave out 11 actually, because 2 of them, they decided to do $25,000. And so the innovation grants went to nonprofits. I do not believe they went directly to businesses.
Thank you, Mark Perriello. In light of the landslide affecting all Hanalei businesses, are there any forgivable loans that businesses can apply for to help us get by with the impact of the road work and being cut off from rejoining the Safe Travels program?
Mark, if you want to go forth, I will come back, follow you if you have anything to share. If you want to proceed, if not, I'll go ahead and proceed if you feel it's appropriate to do so.
You know, right now we're lobbying to make some money available based on the landslide. Right now, the answer is no, unfortunately. There's no local or state assistance that I'm aware of. Mark might know of some federal assistance that is available, but my understanding is short of FEMA declaring this a disaster area, our hands are a little bit tied right now.
Yeah, I'll follow up with Mark on that. This is an issue where you go to Congressman Kahele, because there are going to be pukas like this that can be dealt with. And I think it's very important to lobby your congressperson so that you can put that issue on the table. It is no doubt in my mind that it could be dealt with under the FEMA umbrella. We just don't have the ability to forecast that now. So to answer the question as Mark has done, we have no immediate solution, but the amount of money that's coming to the state of Hawaii under the American Rescue Plan is substantial. And Congressman Kahele and Congressman Case both know that.
Awesome. And if you folks look over in the chat, Diana Singh has put in some information looking at the Kauai Forward website /innovation grant recipients. If you guys click on that link, she says, here is more information about the innovation grants. But as Mark mentioned, these grants were given to nonprofit organizations. Thank you, Diana. All right, the next question is similar to that. It's asking, Hanalei landslide is affecting employees' ability to get to work. How will this impact PPP2 borrowers? This convoy will last for months. What can you recommend to those borrowers to help make sure their loan will be forgiven?
I'll answer that in a hypothetical way, if I may. First of all, as others have done since PPP came into existence, find creative ways to use your people. If they cannot make it to work, is there a way that they can remotely provide value to the company, either through some type of social media interaction? There are creative ways that I'm seeing across the islands where people are utilizing this money to utilize, well, let's say one is branding, to get the message out. Hey, we're not open, but we can make this different. How can we help you in the community? If you're going to have the people funded, engage them, and they're not tempted to go into unemployment as an alternative, use the PPP funds in creative ways. You would be surprised how many businesses have done so, and making their brand better known, or also making sure that they've taken deferred maintenance of a facility. If that's not possible, then social media comes into play. And there are, maybe with Robbie, I won't say to the specifics that she has an idea, but I would say reach out to the SBDC. They too come across innovative ways that businesses are using to deploy their staffs. And if Robbie has something she would like to add to that, creative businesses have been doing it almost the last 12 months since the PPP came into existence. It may not be possible for all, but it's possible for most. Robbie, if you have any thoughts, please provide.
Yes, my thought is like every business is different, and I'm the idea person. So once I meet with the company, we can look at different ways that we could possibly help solve that. So I don't have a general answer for people,
Right.
but if you contact our office, definitely we would help you.
I think I'll just add to that, that to the extent that you are unable to find creative ways to use your employees, the PPP is based on 10 weeks of your average payroll, and the covered period is 24 weeks. So you are able to spread it out a little bit, and you do only have to use 60% on payroll. So if you're able to stretch out your employees, the money that you're spending, and calculate what that 60% is, and you can use the 40% to cover some of your other qualified costs.
Awesome. And a question came in right when you were talking, Sean, that I think that addresses what percentage of the PPP second draw needs to be spent on employees. And maybe let's parcel that out from self versus other employees that you have.
60% aggregate.
Awesome.
And just as a way of example, when thinking about how the owner's compensation replacement counts as payroll cost, if you are a self-employed individual and you had, say, $12,000 in revenue or gross revenue last year, and that's what was used to calculate your owner compensation portion of the PPP. So then if 2.5 months of that would be $2,500. So that full $2,500 counts as payroll cost, and that just goes to you, and that's part of, and that's a simple and automatic forgiveness right there. And then whatever you're on top of that, whatever you have that you paid for payroll to employees that you might have, then you include that as well. But if you, for most small business owners that had that owner compensation replacement, that is a real easy way to get your loan forgiven.
Awesome. Thank you, Sean. While we're on forgiveness, because we have heard so many folks talk about how they don't want to touch PPP due to the unknowns of forgiveness, what is the statistical result at this point of how many of these loans are receiving forgiveness?
We have about 32% of the portfolio. It'll be updated again at the end of the month of April. But so far, the forgiveness process has been materially successful. We don't have statistics yet where we could say, okay, out of X number of loans, 92% of them were successfully forgiven. We do expect that to be revealed in the coming months because Congress is demanding it. But so far, the biggest problem has been the length of time it's taken to get forgiveness for PPP draw number one. I do expect those applications, though, to be more clearly processed by the month of May as the PPP program goes into sunset. So I think you can say so far from what we have seen in the processing centers, and we have one employee from Honolulu involved with that individual process in Fresno, California. And so far, it hasn't been a problem with lack of forgiveness. Most of it has been successfully at 100%. Hopefully statistics will come to us as we approach the early summer months.
And I can just say anecdotally, in terms of what we've had here, what we've seen at the credit union, we have had 100% of the loans that have received a determination from the SBA, all of them have been approved. We haven't had any denied forgiveness applications.
Sean, that's an excellent statistic. I'm going to quote it.
That's
Please
Kaley, K-A-L-E-Y is his last name.
So noted, my
I've
friend.
just-
I'll put you up for meritorious promotion.
I've just botched the next applicant, I think.
Good, you got it.
Oh, we've
good,
got
good
it.
facts. Good facts.
We've got another question that came in. Is there any possibility to get help on talking to the Department of Transportation or to who makes the schedule for the road opening times? Businesses in Honolulu would like to have a chance to generate some income and pay bills and have input. I don't know, Mark Perriello, if you know who to direct them to for that.
Yeah, email me and we can help arrange those conversations. My email is mark@kauaichamber.org. And forgive me if I'm wrong, but I think that the road is open on Saturdays and Sundays.
I think Saturdays.
No,
it's
I'm
not.
hearing a lot of no's, so I think that's not right. Yeah.
And add to
Mark?
that as well.
Mhm.
So
Please.
the road is open on Sundays, and the request has been made by many community leaders to increase the afternoon opening schedule, to create a separate right turn lane into Princeville so that cars aren't backed up as they are currently. And then the consideration of opening up on Saturdays as well. We are Department of Transportation Highway Division is taking into consideration these concerns. For now, they are focused on trying to stabilize the hillside, and they want to focus on that piece. So you can send it to Mark, and then Mark would go ahead and then forward those concerns to the State Department of Transportation, who is making those decisions. But we are hearing the concerns and realize the impact, for all businesses and people getting in and out of Honolulu, especially during that afternoon hours. So the request has been made.
Thank you, Representative Nakamura. We did have another question on that pertaining to, are there discussions for a shuttle or ferry system to get more visitors into town? How can businesses support this goal?
I'm hearing mixed voices about, shuttling visitors in. I think the concern is making it a mandatory way for visitors to get in. So I think if it's not mandatory, if it's a optional way for visitors to come in and out, there might be a willingness to look at that. There's ongoing discussions about that, and I think it's important that Hanalei speak with one voice on this one, and I think the discussions are ongoing. Some are seeing this as a way to reduce some of the traffic, like allow some visitors to come in by car and then allow others to come via shuttle or ferry. And so we need to have the discussions, make sure that, that the Hanalei community is speaking with one voice on this.
Thank you, Representative Nakamura. I will just mention the Chamber of Commerce, Mark Perriello, does a fantastic job in listening and hearing all input and advocating on behalf of the businesses. So his email there is in the chat. Please feel free to reach out and send your peers and your neighbors and your family and friends, because every voice needs to be heard and will be heard. So it's important that we advocate for our business community, ourselves, as we go through this challenge together. That's all that I see in the chat. This was a great Q&A. Any other questions trickling in and/or from the panelists?
While we wait for more questions to come in, I have a question for Mark Spain, just something that we've heard a lot from the businesses that we talk to. And there's some uncertainty as to the businesses that got a first draw PPP loan in 2021. Are they eligible, and how does that work for receiving a second draw PPP loan this year?
Good question. And the difference is this: if you have a covered period, let's say you got the loan for PPP draw number 1 in 2021, the covered period of 24 weeks, that gap has to be expired. And so let's assume you would then be talking for the second PPP loan to be done in May. Now that PUCA, in which it's a PUCA, could be maybe changed to where they could do back-to-back, while the funds are going to be committed to be utilized within the 24-week period, if not sooner. We've had some questions posed to our leadership at SBA headquarters. If they say we choose to have an 8-week covered period, not a 24. So we are having some mixed signals, as the representative is saying, and we're waiting for the decision makers at the level of a gentleman by the name of Patrick Kelly. And we're working with him. He's a heritage originator from Live Oak Bank in Washington DC area. So Sean, if you could, send me an email on that, because it is a work in progress. My next briefing will occur on Monday, that's Monday the 12th of April. If you send me an email, I'll make sure I put that into my own Q&A with our leadership on that call that takes place at 9 o'clock on Monday morning.
All right, thank you. So just to be clear, they are not able at this point to select an 8-week covered period? They have to wait 24 weeks before getting their second draw?
That's the lack of clarity we have, because some people, if you look at those that were approved after June 5th of 2020, they had the option to still use the 8-week period or some period in between. It's our belief that that is going to be the same, but the difference in this process for the people at the Office of Capital Access is having PPP loan covered periods overlap. That's what we're asking for clarity. So if a person says, hey, I can do the expenditure of these funds in 8 weeks. So let's assume they got it on February 1st. That means April 1st, which is now passed, of course, they could apply again. We want to make sure that the election of the covered period is optional, we should have that clarity on Monday. Been a very hot topic, by the way.
Thank you.
You bet.
Leave it to Sean to bring up the hot topics.
You got it.
It sounds like there's a question out in the lobby that they're jotting down. So let's just give everybody a minute to bring in more questions. Here we go.
While we're waiting for more questions, Mark, maybe you could talk a little bit about nonprofits and their eligibility for all of the loans that we've been talking about, or grants.
Yeah, the nonprofits at this point, and I will send you the link that gives you the details, has been the 501c3s, the C6s, and then I don't have it off the hand, I don't have a document in front of me as my briefing doc, but I will be able to provide you, just send me an email. I'll give you what's just come off of our briefing that was done on yesterday, because it seems like several are being added from time to time. I want to make sure I give you an accurate list. Good question.
Great, thank you.
Great. And we have a follow-up comment for Representative Nakamura's discussion. This is from a business owner in Honolulu. I'd like to follow up on Representative Nakamura's answer. I believe that the community, residential and business, would approve of an optional shuttle, but not mandatory shuttles. Also, I'd like to mention that the county is offering a free county bus ride to Honolulu from Princeville. Thank you, Dylan.
Thank you for that comment. And it's good to hear that, that there's some agreement on an optional shuttle. And I'm thinking it would be for both visitors and for residents. I think, we can continue to have the discussion, talk about how that can be structured and how to make that financially feasible. That's good to hear.
All right, that was wonderful. It's 4:50 p.m. We maximized every minute we could from these awesome resources. Thank you again to our panelists for being here. Thank you to the business community for being here. One last question just trickled in. If a business had 4 employees pre-pandemic, but was only able to hire back 3 during the forgiveness window, does that mean that the 60% is reduced by 25%? Where's my math wizards?
Good question. Let me answer it this way. You have a safe harbor provision in the PPP, as long as you don't have now there's 2 mitigating factors. If it was a matter that you chose as an individual owner not to bring back the 4th employee, but if the reason for not bringing back the 4th employee was local conditions or dictates by city or county government, either way, you basically got a safe harbor of 25%. As long as you didn't reduce the FTEs voluntarily, you are covered under that provision. But if you had no ability to bring back anyone, let's say only half the employees because of your local dictates, that would be taken into consideration when dealing with forgiveness.
Great answer. Thank you. This has been incredible. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we will call it an evening and ask everybody to have a great week. Thank you again to our panelists for being here. It sounds like there's a lot of follow-up items. So again, we will be following up with everyone who came in today and everyone who registered. If you're watching this as a recording later, please email Chantal, CHANTAL, at kgefcu.org, and she will send you all of the follow-up materials. Thank you again. Everybody have a great evening, and remember, Kauai strong.
Kalihiwa best. Thank you, Monica.